The 9/11 Truth Movement does not need authentic hijackers on the planes in control of the planes. It does not need hijackers on the planes who themselves may have been hijacked by remote controlled planes. It does not depend on any hijackers or anybody else for that matter on the planes that hit or missed their targets. My point here is that you have intelligence agencies setting up patsies who didn't even need to be on the planes. You can just provide whatever proof you want that they were. And even if they were, it doesn't matter because they're controlling the planes, they're controlling the patsies. But the 9/11 Truth Movement does not depend at all. We're not blaming the hijackers. We're blaming the real perpetrators of 9/11. Who simply used those patsies. So this argument put forth again and again and again by this particular individual, Adam, is absolutely off the point. And I don't know why he keeps pushing it, but it is. I hear it like it's just this point. It's irrelevant.
Why is it that the leading member of the 9/11 Truth Movement, Richard Gage, continues to espouse fringe conspiracies such as living hijackers, no hijackers, drone airplanes, CGI airplanes, and the rest of the banalities that follow the fringe movement? Why is it that the 9/11 Truth Movement allows for people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Jason Bermas to continue to misrepresent and disinform the public about one of the most important topics in human history, September 11, 2001? Why is it important for these people to basically absolve Arab hijackers so desperately that they're willing to entertain even the most irrational of theories? Well, I'll tell you why. Because for the last 20 years, people like Richard Gage and Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer and Barbara Honegger, Christopher Bolin, Rebecca Roth, the Citizens Investigation Team, Judy Wood, Ace Baker, and dozens of others have continually browbeated and repeated the same mantra: the official story is false. The official story is false. The official story is false. Well, after years of studying the events of September 11, 2001, and for commiserating with people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger, I have come to the conclusion that the official narrative to these people is the following: 19 Islamic fundamentalists hijacked American Airlines 11, United Airlines Flight 175, American Airlines Flight 77, and United Airlines Flight 93, and intentionally crashed them into the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and Shanksville. That's it. They don't speak about anything else relating to this official story. Now, to them, that represents what? Where is the official story coming from? The 9/11 Commission report. They haven't read the whole 9/11 Commission report. I currently am the only person in the world to upload in its entirety the 9/11 Commission report and the Joint House Inquiry on my YouTube channel. Did they just talk about plane hijackings and 19 Islamic fundamentalists? No. Did they talk about the pre-intelligence into 9/11? Yes. Did they talk about other avenues relating to September 11, 2001 outside of physics? Yes. Do people like Richard Gage, Barbara Honegger, Jason Bermas generally talk about these issues? No. You'll never hear once Richard Gage or Barbara Honegger or Jason Burmis talk about, say, the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and how that relates to the events of September 11th. They won't talk about the chase for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is actually evading arrest from the FBI counterterrorism office in New York, headed by Frank Pellegrino, where he actually visited the Philippines, Qatar, even Israel. You won't hear them bring up the Bajinka plot, which is where the 9/11 attacks originated from. An international inter-Atlantic bombing plot that involved a couple of phases. One, to bomb 12 airliners and have them all explode over the Pacific, the assassination of Pope John Paul II, as well as intentionally crashing a plane into CIA Langley, as well as a hidden plot that there were hidden cells inside the United States that were ready to hijack 10 airliners and crash them into the Pentagon, the World Trade Center, the Golden Gate Bridge, Sears Tower, a nuclear facility, and other sensitive spots inside the United States. You'll barely hear them talk about Able Danger, which was a Defense Intelligence Agency operation headed by Eric Shoemaker, now Peter Shoemaker, and Hugh Shelton. That involved the Land Information Warfare Activities Division involving metadata collection on terrorist cells inside the United States. You won't hear them talk about the NSA wiretap operation that started back in 1992 regarding Osama bin Laden's cell phone, satellite phone, as well as a house in Sana'a, Yemen, that was monitored since 1996 to the day of the attacks of September 11, 2001. No, you won't hear any of this. Why? Because if you don't believe in hijackers, then that means that they had no involvement with September 11, 2001. Now, of course, you'll get people like Barbara Honegger who say, oh, yes, the planes were indeed hijacked, but there was a plane swap. And we don't know where they crashed because it's not up to us to tell you where they crashed. That's up to the government. And anything the government provides will always be questionable because it came from the government. So in other words, a reciprocating argument that never goes anywhere. That's the reason why you'll see Richard Gage, Barbara Honegger, and Christopher Bolin, Rebecca Roth slowly start to dissipate because they keep repeating themselves and their audience will always become bored. Nothing ever new comes from these people. That's why groups like Citizens Investigation Team, the producers of Loose Change, that's Dylan Avery, Corey Rowe, Jason Burmis, Christopher Bolin, Rebecca Roth, these people aren't even active anymore. Why? A couple of years ago, they were the biggest names in the 9/11 truth movement. Now, nothing. Wonder why that is. Is it because they keep repeating themselves? Is it because they have a limit on how much they can lie and manipulate the public? Is it because that they made their money writing these books and got out when they can? Is it because they're not really researchers in their own right? There are a few 9/11 fringe conspiracy theorists that are still active. Richard Gage is one. Barbara Honegger is another, although she's not really that active anymore. Thank God. There's still a few, but they're not big or prominent as they once were. And there's a reason for it. And that's because they used the 9/11 truth movement for their own benefit, whether it be selling books, remaining relevant, creating a Patreon page, making money, or just staying relevant in the movement because that they might be intentionally disinforming the public on purpose, or that they're afraid of being alone in front of the mirror because they know what they're doing is wrong. And it's why people like myself and Nelson Martins and Ryan Dawson and Darren Harvey, Sean Russell and others are starting, the others that are starting to come up, we're going to remain active and bringing something new to the table all the time. You have to wonder why people like Jason Burmis, for example, continue to propagate the theories of a plane swap. Here's a young guy who basically is none other than one of the most famous co-producers of the most famous 9/11 film in the world, Loose Change, which basically now is an afterthought because nobody really cares about the film because it got so many things wrong. But when he does interviews with recent libertarians such as Reed Coverdale, who tried to get the truth out of him,
I'll say it again. I think the evidence of the planes
this
that
is what
hit
happened.
the World Trade Centers, they look like drones to me. You know, that flash, even in that first video, does not, you know, it looks reminiscent of that second flash.
What?
First, it's small, and by the split seconds, it's getting larger and larger, green color. And as this plane got closer to me, I can see you on the tail. This plane is bearing down towards me, eye-level eye contact. As it's getting closer, I can hear that revving sound that the engine is making. And all I had time to do was to drop the phone, and I screamed and I said, "Lord, I can't do this. You take over." And I dove under my desk. And the last split second, I can remember the plane starts to tilt so that the span of the wings would cover a larger dimension. And with the most thunderous sounds I heard, bam, the plane crashed into the building.
So there you have it. If that plane, 175, was actually a drone outfitted with a missile, then he should be dead. And it really begs belief that why is it that a young man like him, who isn't dumb, who basically espouses falsehoods, known falsehoods, or speculative ideas that contradict the evidence of the case, and the person you just saw is Stanley Pramath, who is actually one of the very few survivors of the South Tower, where he worked at Fuji Bank, where he lived where the impact and above. Only 11 people managed to survive. He was one. And thanks to the heroics of Brian Clark, who actually heard Stanley screaming for help, came and assisted him, and they both left the South Tower alive, of course. So if Flight 175 was actually a drone outfitted with a missile, Stanley Pramath, the person you just saw, is dead. Yet he's alive. And it only took me a couple of seconds to provide that evidence for you. Why didn't Jason Bermas do that? Why didn't Dave Von Kleist, who co-produced In Plain Sight, do that? Because he actually believes what Jason Bermas believes, that Flight 175 was actually a military drone outfitted with a missile and shot it into the World Trade Center. Now, why would you need to do that when the plane itself is a missile? The plane's going over 500 miles an hour. It's actually holding 11,800 pounds of fuel, gallons of fuel, which relates to 77,000 pounds approximately. That in itself would be a missile. That was the whole point of September 11, 2001, was to hijack these planes fully loaded and to use them as the weapon. Remember Bajinka plot, where they were going to put the bombs on the planes? Well, one of the co-conspirators, Abdul Hakim Murad, who was an associate of Ramzi Youssef, the alleged mastermind of 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and a co-mastermind of the Bajinka plot with his uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Instead, the security would be looking for bombs, urea nitrate bombs, which is what they used for the World Trade Center and what they were going to use for the Bajinka plot. Instead, now they were going to use the planes as the actual weapon, which is an ingenious idea. Not original, because the Algerian Islamic Jihad in 1994 were going to do the same thing and crash it into the Eiffel Tower. I believe that's Air France 8989. Hijackings have occurred throughout the 1970s and 80s, and my co-researcher Nelson Martins is a proficient producer of certain films that show that there were older Arab organizations, not religious in their own right, groups like the Abu Nidal Organization, Hezbollah, who have conducted hijackings before. But you don't hear any of the truth movement advocating for fake planes then. But only on September 11, 2001, do we hear that Arabs cannot be hijacking planes. If it was September 12th, sure. September 13th, ironically, which was going to be an extension to September 11, 2001, where they arrested a mass amounts of Arabs who were trying to board planes with weapons and dressed as pilots. Additional hijackings were going to occur. Did they talk about that? Of course not. Because according to them, hijackings and Arabs represent the official narrative. And the official narrative has to be opposed at all costs. According to people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Christopher Bolin and Rebecca Roth and Jason Burmis and Ace Baker and Jim Fetzer and Alex Jones and Thierry Mason and, dozens and dozens of others that have browbeated the public into believing that the official narrative has to be opposed. No matter how ridiculous, no matter how irrational the opposing viewpoint is, it will be supported in favor over the official narrative. Now, if we don't have hijackers and we don't have hijacked planes, that means all the intelligence apparatuses that Richard Gage claims are all working in conjunction with one another, but that's not the case because the CIA was intentionally withholding information from the FBI about 2 hijackers inside the United States. And the NSA were withholding information from the CIA and the FBI and the State Department about a wiretap operation of bin Laden's satellite phone and an al-Qaeda communications hub in Yemen. Not to mention the Israelis and Saudis who were monitoring the hijackers and even assisting them on the East Coast and West Coast. All of these operations, including Able Danger, including the CIA, the NSA, all of these operations don't exist because if there's no hijackers, what operations? And if Richard Gage is basically going to say that the government could just make up whatever it wants, well, then he's basically saying that whatever he does at this point, Richard Gage, is fruitless because the government could do whatever it wants. So why are you even arguing for September 11, 2001 to be an inside job when you know you're not going to get a new investigation? You're not going to get any new information. By the way, what I just said is demonstrably false. We have some new information. We could get a new investigation. But with people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger espousing these ridiculous theories, you're not going to get one because nobody's going to take you seriously. Nobody. That's why Richard Gage is basically advocating to a specific audience. And that specific audience are people who don't do research. They don't do investigations. They believe 9/11 was an inside job right off the bat. That's not what a real investigation looks like. A real investigator basically looks at a crime and finds evidence for an inside job. You don't go into a crime scene and basically say, I know what didn't happen here. No, you look for evidence of a crime. You interview people who were at the crime scene to see what they saw during the midst of the crime. Then you run the scientific method. You test the hypothesis to see that what you come up with is true. Gage doesn't do that. Honegger doesn't do that. Burmis doesn't do that. None of these people do that. It's unfortunate. But what do? How do we combat disinformation? By promoting and advocating for the truth, no matter where it leads you. And if 9/11 wasn't done by Israel, or if 9/11 wasn't done by Saudi Wahhabists, or if 9/11 wasn't done by Bush and Cheney, then so be it. You can't disregard the truth for your version of the truth. And believe me when I tell you that if you go down this road of honesty and integrity and unblemished reputation, you're going to be alone in your endeavor. You might find maybe 1 or 2, if you're lucky, 1 or 2 people that actually think like you, that believe in the essence of truth like you. You might be lucky. And you might feel that the world is against you. That it seems that the government is basically not giving you relevant information. It might seem that there are hundreds of others who are promoting disinformation, whether it's intentional or not. You're going to feel alone, but you're not. There are people like you out there. And I know when I could come across a person like you out there. I've met some people. I've been very fortunate, so fortunate to meet certain people like this. And they've given me the motivation to keep going, even though there are times I just want to say the hell with it. So why am I so aggressive to these people? Why am I so anal when it comes to the truth? Because when it comes to disinformation, when it comes to manipulation of the public, whether it's coming from the government or whether it's coming from disinformation channels like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Jason Burmis, because it produces people like this.
But, you know, it could have been a plane with damn explosives on it. I mean, you know, it could have, you know, I mean, how can somebody not understand that, you know?
Yep.
It could have been a plane that shot a missile. How can somebody not understand that?
Mhm.
You know, I mean, there are, I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me, but aren't there the famous Naudette brothers or whatever it is, the plane hitting? Don't it show it shooting the damn missile in the building right before it hits?
There's that bright light that hits before when 175 and 11. There was a bright flash.
Yeah,
Well, I
so-
think